Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out on this very cold winter's day. We'll start. Are there any apologies, Becky?
No, there's no apologies.
Okay. The minutes. Has anyone any challenge on the minutes? Are we okay? Yes, Councillor. Oh, okay, no problem.
Could I just ask you to put your mic on, Councillor Corley? Thank you.
Let me just find that there. There was just 2 points I wanted to raise on the minutes.
Okay.
If I can just get them open. Sorry, Chairman. Right. Here we go. Well, just 2 points we raised, and I haven't received any replies. If I can just find them again. Sorry about this. Right, here we go. At so at the bottom of page 7, myself and Councillor Gray had asked questions about one leisure. The panel were advised that this level of detail was not available within the report and would be investigated and communicated back at a later date. I haven't received anything yet.
Right, so I haven't had a response directly to me to pass on to you, so I'll chase that up for you,
Thank you.
to follow that up for you.
And similar on page 8, I raised a question on the difference in the tonnage between the green compostable and the dry recycling waste, and we accepted that that wasn't something that could be conjured up on the night, but again, we've still not received, as was promised in the minutes.
No problem. So I'll chase it up for you in the morning, and then we'll get that response.
And
circulate
further,
that to the panel.
sorry, there was a third one further down on the St Neots Riverside walks again,
No
if you
problem.
wouldn't mind, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Members' interests. Sally.
In regard to item 4, I'm on one of the recognised organisations, and they are mentioned in that report. So,
No? Okay. Item 3, notice of executive decisions.
So you have had the notice of executive decisions. Is there any questions on any of the items coming up, Councillor Gray?
Yeah, just 2 really. The first theme is there are 3 items that have been put on here. This is the first time they've appeared on here, and they're going to Cabinet on Monday. Now, you know, I know it's always a bit regrettable and there's always last minute stuff, but we're going to talk about 3 of them tonight, and you know, we obviously don't like to do that because the whole point is that we've got time to properly scrutinise these things and air them so that the Executive Councillor has an opportunity, along with officers, to reflect on the views of scrutiny. So it's clearly unfortunate, shall we say, that we're going to be looking at them for the first time tonight, and the report is already written and in the Cabinet papers as well. So can we please avoid trying to do that? I always used to get my knuckles rapped for doing it, so I'm quite happy to extend and return the compliment. And on the second point, one thing that is on there in good time is the corporate plan, which I notice is sort of due to appear sometime next year, early next year. I notice that it's going to sort of straddle the budget period of the council as well, and I think it would be useful for scrutiny to have decent time to talk about it, because clearly it's going to be a new corporate plan produced by the coalition, and so consequently let's make sure that we've got decent time to look at it, would be my encouragement into the democratic process.
Thank you.
I'll feed that back for you, Councillor Gray.
Okay, so item 4. So it's the Huntingdon UK Shared Prosperity Fund. Councillor Wakeford.
Thank you. I won't sit all the way at the end of the table so far from you if here is okay. I am accompanied by the corporate director for Place, already sitting at the table. I commented last time that you had a double billing of me last month. I'm afraid I'm presenting 3 items, as Councillor Gray touched on earlier, but mercifully, either some kind person finalising the agenda has either saved me or given me a break in the middle, or otherwise saved you from hearing me 3 times in a row. So they're not consecutive. I might even bravely predict that my 3 items this evening are likely to be in ascending order of controversy and comment, but that's entirely to the panel, of course, as to where it wishes to place its focus. So I'm just going to say a few words of introduction on the UK Shared Prosperity Funding paper, and Kate may wish to add on some points of detail. But essentially, the SPF, the Shared Prosperity Fund, is the replacement to what was previously European structural funding. I propose to make no comment on whether this constitutes a Brexit dividend, beyond observing that in practical terms, I think it's worth a bit less to us than the previous amounts, but it is what it is. This sets out proposed intentions around spend for what is, we think, a 3-year tranche of monies, but obviously in the current climate, we would be brave to imagine government might not consider revisiting allocation pots. If others have more information than we do on that, all ears. Excuse me. And in setting out our proposed allocations, I think obviously there is no single objective right way of distributing the quantity of funding set out here. So in making decisions in what to propose, we've been informed by our priorities as an administration, as well as the funding streams that are also available elsewhere in the county in order to maximise bang for our buck, and look at continuing activity that has been funded under previous funding streams as well. And I think rather than give you my more detailed potted summary of what's in here when you've got the paper, and Kate is sat along, as you will hear a bit from me this evening, I'll stop there. If Kate wishes to add anything before we open to questions and comments, and really keen to seek feedback, because, as I say, there's obviously no perfect way of doing this at all.
Thank you. If I may, I'll just add a couple of points, really, as it's hopefully all in the paper. Obviously doesn't want to hear about UK Share Prosperity Fund. I don't know why. I might move mics. Hang on. Right, 3rd time lucky. So UK Share Prosperity Fund, as you can see in the paper, we have received an allocation. So Cambridgeshire and Peterborough had an allocation. Our proposed activities have fed into the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough UK Share Prosperity investment plan. And I'm pleased to say that on Monday we got confirmation from government that the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough investment plan had been approved. So we have got the money that's in the paper. The one bit I would just correct from Councillor Wakeford is when we wrote this paper and when we worked with government and the combined authority, it was a 3-year programme. It's now a 2-year programme. So that means that activity will be delivered in 23, 24, 24, 25. So we will be having to do some work to reprofile the spend across activities, and that will take place over the next couple of weeks. So that's not a local change, that's a national change that came out on the back of the budget. the UK Share Prosperity Fund is made up almost of two elements, if I may describe it like that. So there's the 8 projects that are proposed in here, which we've been working on over the summer and with the combined authority. And then there's a second element of funding that was made available in September, early October, which is the Rural Fund. And that is still being developed. So the very high level plan went in via the combined authority on the 30th of November. So that element is still very much in development. So I just wanted to kind of outline those two different elements.
And, thank you indeed for the clarification. Years are disappearing as we speak.
Are there any questions? Councillor Gardner.
Thank you very much, Chair. Under the active travel feasibility studies, we don't actually say what we're going to be looking at. Are we going to be looking at cycle routes, or what do we mean by active travel feasibility studies? Because if we're looking at cycle ways, then I've got 1 or 2 suggestions where we could be looking at. So, but we haven't come up with any there. So if you want some suggestions, if it is cycleways, then please let me know.
You take me by surprise, Councillor Gardner. Potentially, but you know, active travel, we're looking to encourage modes beyond purely cycling. But I think safe to say we are going to be open to suggestions of where we might look at developing feasibility studies.
Councillor Gardner.
I'm taking careful note.
From Brampton Hut to Auchenbury, they constructed a very nice cycleway adjacent to it. But when you get to the roundabout off the A1 at Auchenbury, there's no, the cycleway disappears and residents have to then negotiate HGVs and everything going round the roundabout, which is very dangerous. So it would be very beneficial for my residents to have a cycleway constructed from that point into Auchenbury, where it will be safe for residents to then get. They could then cycle from Auchenbury into Brampton, into Huntingdon. So it will be a very much safer route than they've currently got at the moment. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Corley.
Forgive me.
Of course.
May I further on that? So I think Councillor Gardner may have made reference to the same surprising lack of integration, I think fair to say, in our discussion about the transport strategy recently, and I can assure him I have even made reference to that specific anecdote in conversation with county officers in the meantime, as underlining our broader ask around the transport strategy to ensure dots are joined up, so to speak, to it's never going to overcome the challenges in enabling active travel across a very rural district, but we can at least sort of get rid of the unnecessary additional barriers. So that's digressing ever so slightly, but we are taking very much on board your advice, Councillor.
Thank you. Councillor Corley.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's actually on the same point. The 150,000 there for the feasibility studies. I just, how much are we going to be reaching out to other bodies? And I guess if John Morris was still Councillor John Morris, I know he'd absolutely be jumping all over you over this. Just, I guess, 150,000 for the whole district on feasibility studies probably isn't a great amount of money. But then if we can sort of jump on it, and you have to forgive me, I can't think of the name of some of the cycle groups. John would be sort of, like I say, straight on it, and I can't think of the name of the group that he was part of.
His particular group, I think, is the Hunts Walking and Cycling group.
Yeah. But it's using, how much can we use their information to sort of, because like I say, 150,000 could be quite a lot of money to to sort of to use if that information's there. Equally, if we're not going to use other people's information, it's not a great deal of money, because if if we all do our jobs properly and come up with suggestions as Ian's just done, that money's not going to go very far at all, is it?
No, thank you. And just to reassure colleagues, the suggestion of producing some feasibility studies. So yeah, we're not going to build the routes, obviously, for that amount of money, as you're very clear. But a study that would be a step towards helping us achieve funding for viable routes. The areas where we would look to make feasibility studies are certainly not to be picked at random or by cabinet members off the cuff in a darkened room. We absolutely are looking for input on that one. I'm, dare I say, ever so slightly surprised I haven't had contact directly from former Councillor Morris in the days since the papers were published on this one, but certainly, particularly given that helpful input, would imagine inviting them to make suggestions, because it is, I think, slightly silly for us to try and reinvent the wheel.
Thank you. Councillor Corley.
Thank you, Chair. You'll be glad to hear I don't have a question about cycle paths, but we'd like them in my area too. I just want to go to the top, the big £320,000 price tag we've got attached to supporting local businesses reaching for net zero. Just one point I just want to raise. Surely we're not helping them to increase their utility costs, as it states there. I'd assume we're helping them to reduce their utility costs. It's probably just a typo, but I'd like to understand if we are paying money to help them increase their utility costs. I certainly would like to understand.
Happy
that.
to assure you that we are not looking in this climate.
Yeah. So that wasn't my serious point, but I think let's just get that one right. Can we just understand a bit more, if you're able to share with us, what that sounds like? Because it's very top line there, reduce their carbon footprint, hopefully reduce their utility costs, become net zero with a net zero plan and capital grants for implementation. It's very general and top line. Do we have any ideas yet of what that will look like? Because it's a big lot of money, and I'm supportive of us doing that. I just would like to know what I'm getting for my money.
So this is indeed linking to one of the top line topics that we were required to look at funding proposals within the SPF framework. I wonder if Kate might wish to offer a more technical answer to that question than I would give you. It might be wise.
Yeah, happy to do so. So there'll be a number of things that would sit within that project that would include kind of special advice. So going out, engaging with businesses, developing an action plan that can be implemented to reduce, thank you for that, utilities costs in a number of different ways. The capital grant element is match funding, so where a business chooses to invest in measures to reduce, to move towards net zero, that we would match that through the capital grant.
Thank you, that's very helpful. Can I just, one supplementary, if you do we have a time scale? I know you said this is a 2-year funding proposal, but no business is going to get to net zero in 2 years. How are we going to continually support these guys beyond the 2-year funding round?
So in terms of the activity starting, we'll be looking to commission this piece of work. So it will start in 23-24, if I get my years right. We will be looking to work quite closely with the businesses. So there'll be a series of metrics that we'll need to put in place. So with this UK Shared Prosperity funding, essentially it comes down in 3 different tranches from government, business, community and people. On the business element, there are a set of standard performance metrics that we will be required to report on. So we'll be required to report on, the number of businesses that we've supported. For other business interventions, it will be businesses created, jobs safeguarded, etc. But we'll also be required to report on kind of reduction or move towards net zero. So that will be part of our contract with the CPCA. We will then need to ensure that we work with the businesses and monitor that over a period of time.
Any other questions? No?
I just wanted to make sure other colleagues had a chance to ask questions first. So a few from me, if I may, points. and some questions. I think that if you go to section 4 about risks, there's an excellent summary there, I think, about what I feel about the paper that's in front of us this evening, which is basically that we've got some money, here's some things that we might do, but it's very undeveloped. And I think, Kate, you alluded to that in your introduction. And my concern really is that we are being asked as a panel to really delegate to the Executive Councillor and to the Corporate Director for Place the ability to go out and spend £1.5 million of taxpayers' money on We've had some questions about some of the items on that table, but there's not one of them that's on there that really has a specific kind of business plan attached to it. It's all, we're going to do this, we're going to find out what we're going to do, we're going to put together something, there's going to be a feasibility study. So it's really unclear, I think, at this point as to exactly what it is that you're being given executive authority to spend £1.5 million worth of money on. What are we getting for it? Now, you're going to come back to us in sometime in the early part of 2024 and give us an update on what you're doing and how you've got on. But I feel that before we sign off on spending that amount of money, we ought to be seeing greater detail around these schemes. Now, I'm broadly supportive of the thrust of what they're trying to achieve. They seem to be hitting the kind of corporate objectives that the coalition has put forward. You've gone to consultation on it. So they're the kind of big themes that we should be looking at, but they're completely undeveloped at this point in time from what I can see. And I really worry that we're sort of signing off on a project that sort of says, we'll see you in 15 months' time, tell us what you decided to spend it on, and we'll see how we're getting on when we get there. So that's my big concern with the recommendation that's in front of us, is that we're delegating away all our authority and all our scrutiny around an important piece of taxpayers' money. Unusually, and my colleague to my right touched on this, actually a lot of this is revenue spending. It's about people. It's not about things. It's around enabling council officers, consultants, third parties to tell us how we might better do things, enable things like digitalisation, entrepreneurship. These are skills that none of us possess. Well, some of us possess them, but we don't corporately possess them. So we're going to go out and procure them to do what? To achieve what? I just don't think there's enough from me in this paper. And I understand the timing is really cruel and you've got to get on with it, you've got to press forward. But I wonder if there's an intermediate step, Chair, whereby we might have some, perhaps in 3 months' time when we've got some more detail about what these schemes are going to look like, that then we decide, well, actually, yes, that's the way that we want to spend the money that has been given to us for the people of the district. So those are my concerns, really, with the recommendation that is before us, that I think that we need more, we ought to be having more detail back from the Executive Councillor and from the corporate side of the council once they're clearer about what exactly it is that we're going to be getting for the money that we're spending. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. Councillor Wickford.
Thank you, and thank you also at the end of that for part addressing the question I was minded to ask in response, which is what the suggested balance between the wish to proceed at pace in absolutely in light of the risks flagged in 4.1 in the budget section around the rapidly rising cost context. I dare there may be comment passed later this evening with respect to another item around a similar theme as well. Between that versus obviously the wish to feedback and provide openness and input. I suppose I would ask, so very happy to take that away and reflect. But I suppose I would ask whether Scrutiny would find it as helpful as Councillor Grace perhaps indicated at some later point down the line. I think you use the language, is this actually what we want to do? If that's not a realistic choice by that point, given timeframes, and presumably being asked to comment on something that will feel increasingly like a fait accompli over time would feel less attractive to the panel, but very happy to review timescales, discuss with Kate. You may have comments off the cuff now.
I'm not doing very well. If I may, I think with external funding, there is always a challenge in that pots of money drop down very quickly and the turnaround times are ridiculously fast. UK SPF is kind of in that place. Having said that, this is the first round of UK shared prosperity funding, so we've had to move out of the blocks very quickly. I would hope that moving forward, should central government remain committed to UK shared prosperity funding being the main source of replacement funding for European funding, that future rounds, so by that I'm talking about 25, 26, 27 onwards, we'll have a much greater kind of lead-in time understanding what we're doing. So I think there's a balance to be struck now about enabling us to move forward and make sure that we are gearing up to get ready to deliver as early as we can, particularly to those businesses and individuals who are being impacted at the moment with cost of living, with the scrutiny and recognising that external funding moves quickly. So I think there's a balance that we've got to try and find that's particularly challenging at the moment. But I would certainly hope for additional and future rounds of UK shared prosperity funding. There ought to be an ability to have a bit more of a lead-in time.
Councillor Gray?
Probably just a supplementary reflection. I understand what you're saying. That doesn't negate the fact that we should spend our money. We should spend the money that's given to us wisely. We shouldn't just be thinking we've got to spend it because it's there. And I just worry when I look down that list: to be commissioned, to be commissioned, to be agreed, to be commissioned, to be commissioned, allocations. When I look at active travel feasibility studies, there's £150,000 there, and what we're going to do is commission feasibility studies. I mean, the County Council must have commissioned so many feasibility studies about active travel. Why can't we spend some money and make it? These are the challenges I want to bring into the process, or I feel that we ought to be bringing into the process, rather than yet more feasibility studies. Because as we'll get onto later on, what people that we represent are interested in is what difference are you actually going to make to us. So I take on board your point, Kate. I think it's, I do understand probably better than most around the table the dynamics between getting on with it and democratic scrutiny. But I just think these are very undeveloped at the moment. So even if the Cabinet are minded to proceed with the recommendation that are on there, I personally think we ought to see what these things look like as they get developed and commissioned.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Councillor Wickford? No?
Well, just to thank on that, absolutely recognise Councillor Gray has a little bit of experience in this department, so take that entirely in the spirit intended. I think very happy, as I say, to go away and reflect between now and Cabinet about how we can best give visibility to that over the coming months. If I may as well flag to link on to the next item, as we haven't, as there weren't questions about it. There is, if you look at the final two rows on page 6, there's an allocation linking to Ramsey Great White improvements, and we're going to touch on Ramsey in the next item as well. And in order to ensure most efficient management of not too many separate work streams, the Vibrant Communities part as well, you'll see there is suggested to be proceeded with by incorporation into the Market Towns programme as well. So both of which we can possibly touch on if there are questions under the next item instead, but I flag while they're on the paper in front of us.
Thank you. Are there any more questions or comments before we actually make some recommendations on this? In light of Councillor Gray's comments about initially summary on what our discussions covered, is it fair to say that we broadly support the report? However, we'd like a little more detail on the projects and the scopes of the projects coming back?
I was going to say, are you proposing an additional recommendation to be added in that it would be brought back to this panel in, say, the next 3 months as a update on those? If so, you would need to propose that and have a seconder for that, and then a general vote.
So, in the interest of keeping democracy flowing, I think we should see an update come back to this, but I'm happy to trust the two colleagues that are sitting around the table to get on with it. So the recommendation that sits there, I'm happy with, but I'd like to have an update in 3 months' time coming back to this panel as to what has happened to all the things that are going to be agreed and commissioned and what have you. So I propose that we add that to our comments. I'll seek a seconder.
Okay, I think. Yeah. Oh, and can we have a vote on that amendment? We all agreed?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. That first one, can't be bad. Okay, so we're now on to item 5, the market towns. Councillor Wakeford.
Thank you. I have managed to swap to the correct set of papers on here. This is the latest quarterly update on the Market Towns programme. In front of you, it has been a busy quarter in the programme. Conscious we touched on aspects in this merely a month ago under another item while I happened to be present. But the report flags and indeed the summary highlights in particular. In recent weeks, we have undertaken and concluded the consultation activity now on the master plans for Huntingdon, St Ives and Ramsey. We were able to extend our openness to comments back on those in view of the volume, at least in particular from one of those 3 market towns, and we are working through the feedback now. In terms of the St Neots projects, we're now at the detailed design stage on the transport works. The other key bit of good news to share is with respect to the funding that we've been nearly there on. We've thought for what feels like a couple of updates, which is the local growth fund bid in Ramsey, the Great White enhancements, and so we've got 1.15 million from the combined authority now confirmed on that. So that is, I'm sure colleagues will agree, very good news in expanding the investment we've got for a project that is the sort of first piece emerging from the master plans, which is if you like, a proof of concept about the notion of what we were discussing on the previous item, perhaps feasibility studies, but plans in place so that when there are pots available, we can pounce on them. And as commented in the previous item, we're proposing adding to that to make a total total investment of even greater magnitude in Ramsey. The we could touch on the Vibrant Communities spend, referenced more briefly in the earlier paper, but in more detail here if members are interested. But just to jump around a little bit in the paper, in terms of the other Future High Streets work, which we may come on to, as the report picks up from 2.8 about the old Falcon. This is, as I've underlined, HGC's grasp of to local members previously. This is an absolute priority in St Neots. It is highly visible, an area of acute interest and concern as part of the Future High Streets Fund work, and we have commissioned some reports to help us take the next steps in terms of deciding how to proceed on the old Falcon after having liaised closely with the property owner to identify what options we've got working with them as well. So we'll be returning more fully on the old Falcon, but are pursuing options that we've got to unpack. And in terms of the Priory Centre, as the report highlights, that having, as we discussed, I think, in the last quarterly update, having reviewed the works commissioned previously and indeed undertaken previously, we have reached the conclusion that what is sensible is to apply an immediate focus on the Priory Centre itself and making improvements there, given the quantum of funding available, rather than seeking to stretch too far and risk achieving less across the wider Priory quarter. So there is certainly interest in wider improvements works of a more sort of visual character around the quarter, but to flag that the Priory Centre would be the key object of the funds under that line in the that area of the project. I will pause there, I think, rather than spell out even more of what's in the paper, which I know colleagues will have read carefully, but Pam may wish to unpack on a couple of points as well.
Comments, questions? Councillor Pickering.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm interested to know a little bit more about the wayfinding project. It seems that we're spending £250,000 on digital signage. And I'm just wondering whether that might be perceived as something of a white elephant at a time when, you know, we're kind of struggling to meet our basic obligations for frontline services and so on. So I'm just interested to know how that's, you know, what sort of value that's expected to deliver to the, you know, the towns that are going to be served by that project.
So we touched on gremlins have come around to this side of the table. We made reference to interest in looking back at this in the previous quarterly update as well. I don't recall particular commentary about that then, but the wayfinding project, as I'd understand, is linked to some of the other topics we've talked about, this evening and previously around supporting and enabling people, active travel at one level. So signage around our market towns, I think, could be improved in order to help people make full use of accessing what is available in market towns, clearer signage to help point both regular and newer visitors around areas of market towns. Feels like a gap in St Neots, but more broadly across the district, I think. So this is about helping connect up, as it were, what we have in our vibrant market towns as part of looking at how we can make further improvements to them in a more ambitious way, which was touched on in the master plans as well.
Councillor Pickering.
Sorry, could you just say a little bit more about what kind of
I think
information? Sorry.
Pam was happy to come in. We're struggling with the IT. Shall we move? Shall we share?
Thank you, Sam. I was just going to add to what Councillor Wakeford has said in saying that the wayfinding project is one of sort of the last remaining accelerated programme of projects. So councillors might recall that we were given 1.85 million as part of some of the funding from the CPCA to look at some early initiatives in the towns. The wayfinding project sort of was deferred for a period of time, but the current administration feel that there's benefit in not only looking at that for the 3 towns that were originally identified, but also incorporating St Neots in that project. So the report indicates that some of the unspent funds from that original budget in the accelerated programme would be brought into a sort of an expanded wayfinding project. The feedback we've received from a lot of the town councils in our engagement is about advertising what's good in our town centres and encouraging the visitor economy. And we sort of see this as one of those opportunities to enable people to actually manoeuvre around the town and actually have destination points and things like that. So that the funding has come from the combined authority. We're suggesting that we expand it to incorporate St Neots, so there's almost like a branding across the 4 towns. So people would get used to the type of digital screen or whatever we end up delivering in all the 4 towns.
Thank you,
So
Pam.
it's sort of to conclude that, if I may, as I'm conscious of maybe follow up on it, it's less grand than the intervention project set out in the master plans, for example, or the Future High Streets Fund work, but strikes us as sort of lower hanging fruit in terms of enabling the benefits, as Pam and I have touched on, but very open to thoughts.
Councillor Pickering, did you want to respond?
Yeah, just one sort of small follow-up. It's just about whether there are ongoing costs associated with maintaining it.
Have you got?
Short answer is we're sure there are going forward, as with other aspects of HDC estate. But Pam may wish to comment more fully.
I think that would be what part of the rescoping of the project, that we would look to try and minimise any ongoing revenue implications. There's potential of digital screens that can provide advertising. That's a route that we could go down potentially, so that actually they end up self-funding. It's a project we're doing with Connecting Cambridgeshire that obviously have operated these types of schemes and have a wealth of experience and will sort of give us options that we can then bring back to future meetings.
Councillor Corley.
Thank you, Chair. Just a comment and a question, really. The comment, I agree with Councillor Pickering. I think you used the phrase white elephant. I suspect that's what we're going to have in our hands. I hope to be proved wrong. Second, I was intrigued. The Town Council seem very keen on this. Are they putting any money in the pot to see this, since they believe they'll be the main beneficiaries?
So this is a suggestion as to how to use the unspent pot, as we've touched on from the accelerated funds. But we are always open to conversation with towns councils about ways of helping subsidise and match fund what we do if they're interested in that. I'm conscious of, we have a role and they have a role, but Councillor makes a good point in terms of different ways of funding signage in market towns. But no, that is not a conversation we've looked at in terms of making use of this pot of funding. But I'm happy to take that as a suggestion that we look at that in order to stretch the funding further, if that was the suggestion.
Councillor Colley.
It was more a question, have they put money in the pot? It sounds, from what you've said, no, they haven't. And yeah, my suggestion is if we're going to go forward, perhaps they'd like to put their hand in their pocket too.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. Huntingdon used to have a digital screen in the town centre, which more often than not didn't actually work, and it was eventually removed. What would these new screens be? What would they be showing that's any different? And actually, are we needing them when everyone's got smartphones nowadays?
Pam? Councillor Wakewood?
Thank you. We, as Pam's touched on, will be working with providers who do a lot of this, but absolutely ensuring there's a future to them would be a necessary part of any decision to progress on it. It's many people have smartphones. It may not be all visitors, but in terms of the ease and convenience in signage of helping visibly without you needing to dig out a phone, without you needing to know what to look up, to help point to what you might even not know that you want to look up, is part of the value of the signage, part of the way of helping people navigate towns better. But as I've indicated, we are open to comments, and if there is a feeling that this is not a helpful intervention, then we will take that back as well.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Corley, did you have?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it wouldn't be normal if I didn't ask something about Ramsey, would it? Obviously. And it's, I know, Pam, we have spoken about this over the telephone, but it's just to clarify, because it's a little bit misleading, I think, and in that I'm trying to find, it's 2.21, and then a bit further down in 3.1, it's just about the amounts. Obviously, it's great news that we've just got the most recent tranche from the CPCA that went through last week, which is brilliant. So obviously, all of this I welcome, but it's just the 1.15 million. With a projected cost of 1.45 million. Now there was the 300,000 that was from a previous tranche, which it alludes to it a little bit, but doesn't actually say it about a bit further down with the civic hub. That was part of the first tranche that we actually applied for and we were successful on. And then we've got the 220 that we spoke about in the previous item. So it's just to sort of clarify that there's a lot of different numbers there, and just sort of seeing which, what the actual total is at the end of it all. Could please.
Just to come back straight on
Yes.
that. So you're quite correct. It is a little bit hard to follow. So the original accelerated programme of projects identified £295,000 worth of funding to support some public realm pedestrianisation of the Great White. So that's funding that we've still secured. So that's still part of that pot of funding. But when we saw the opportunity to submit the local growth fund bid, we decided that we would hold off doing any works to that public realm so that we could hopefully incorporate that funding with the new money that we've now secured. Alongside that, we are looking at supporting with £250,000 of UK Share Prosperity funding, the revenue element. So the funding that we've got is all capital funding, as is always the way with these sorts of projects. But what we've done as a project team is to look at the fact that we actually need some revenue funding to support that project. We want to give it a really good opportunity to succeed. So we need to look at not only funding to project manage that, so that that's not money that's coming out of the council's resources, but also we need to look at promotion and sort of just the sort of the support it will need to get off the ground once it is actually hopefully constructed.
Thank you, Pam.
Yeah. So the idea, I think, of combining a sort of singular capital plus revenue figure, I'm not sure would be terribly helpful in light of what Pam's explained. But this is about how to give kind of fullest effect to the benefits that we hope the project will enable. But very happy to look at how we can set out more clearly, and certainly in the further conversations that we're certainly looking forward to undertaking with Councillor Corney and colleagues in their town capacities around this. We can be as crystal clear as is helpful in sharing that breakdown.
Thank you.
If I may, yeah. So in the 1.15 million. So are we saying that includes the 295,000, which I think that's to go on top of that. Okay, that's fine, because I know that the 295, I think there was bizarrely it was a very small amount that we had to match fund from the town council. I think on the part one of the fund, which was for the civic hub, it was almost like for like, and then I think it was about £10,000 towards the realm. But okay, no, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'll just say thank you to officers for the extra time that was allocated for St Ives to pull all the large amounts of input together to create a coordinated response from the town council. That was appreciated. Just to ask in context of 2.19 and the three towns, do we currently have an idea for the timescale for the completion of the analysis and the final version of the master plans? And also, can I ask whether the budget the small budget that was allocated to the piece of work is still on track to be within budget to complete? Thank you.
We, as I indicated earlier, we extended the deadline for consultation input, not purely for St Ives, that it was motivated by St Ives, but we communicated that with respect to the other plans as well. But as the report acknowledges in 219, it is fair to say, I think, that the St Ives document is the one that is has generated the most mixed range of responses, and therefore I suppose the fullest and most complex work needed to review and refine. But in terms of timescales, I will pass to Pam next to me to answer more fully.
So just to sort of elaborate further, we have started to analyse the responses on the online survey. So as the report says here, we had 234 responses, of which 107 were St Ives. So quite a healthy response from St Ives. We've been speaking alongside looking at the analysis with Tetra Tech, the company that did the draft master plans. We've got meetings with them next week to begin the process of the analysing of our analysis, if that makes sense. So we're going to be sharing with them the outcome from the consultations that have been undertaken. We expect there to be less changes to the Ramsey and Huntingdon master plans, although we are sort of expecting some sort of tweaks, for want of a better expression. The St Ives plan, as we can probably tell from the number of responses, is the one that probably needs more work. There is some funding remaining from the work that Tetra Tech did, so we are suggesting that the balance of that money will be used to look at the St Ives plan and what we can do that will incorporate some of the feedback that we have received. What we are anticipating is that those meetings will be happening over the next few weeks, and that we will be able to get back to people that have responded, because we think it's important that we get back to people as soon as possible, even if there's not with a full analysis, just to say that their feedback has been incorporated into our discussions before the end of the year. And we will just aim to get that information, but we obviously are dealing with a vast number of responses, and we do want to take people's views into account.
Thank you, Pam. As a St Ives councillor, I endorse that, and thank you for your time and efforts on that. Thank you very much. Are there any more questions? Oh, Councillor Gardner.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, well, with regard to the wayfaring project, I would agree with Councillor Harvey and Councillor Pickering. You know, I do think it's probably more of a vanity project rather than anything else, when I think the authority should be looking at spending its money on the people that are in actual difficulty at this current time. We don't really need a sign to tell us where we need to go in a town. But going back to St Neots, we have done a lot of reports and studies and what have you, feasibility studies. Can you let me know, these additional reports and studies you've now done, I'm assuming that the money for those reports has come out of the funding that you've already got for the projects in St Neots. As a result, I would imagine that the actual money that we can actually spend on those projects is subsequently reduced, and therefore we can't provide perhaps what we might have hoped, but I'll let you come back to me on that. So that's the first question. I'll get you to answer that one first then, Sam.
Thank you. So I think there are a couple of bits there. I mean, the wayfinding project wasn't the invention of our joint administration. It was a project that we inherited,
And we shelved it. Which we shelved.
Which was inherited in the scheme and had been paused, and we've given consideration to unpausing.
Wow.
But you know, the vanity description is the councillors. But it is of course capital funding, which limits the respects in which the funds could otherwise be spent on supporting residents in the way Councillor Gardner suggested. But in terms of the future high streets monies, I mean the sort of clear and straight and obvious answer is of course that works to identify, you know, preparatory works, including consultant commissions, studies necessary, works to identify what kind of, you know, we might put spades in the ground to do in terms of the physical building works in parts of this are part of the funding allocated to the project. There's not some separate fund for that, as I suspect the councillor is clear, but happy to clarify that for him.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, can I go back? If you look under, which is somewhat concerning with regard, perhaps you can give us a bit more clarity on it. If you look under 2.15, we've been informed by the town council has now informed you that they are investigating the purchase of the neighbouring Oast Lounge, I would assume for their use. So if that is the case, then how will that then affect, if they do decide to proceed, when are they going to let HDC know with regard to that, and how will that then affect our redevelopment of the Priory Centre? Because you don't really indicate to us here how that might affect us.
Councillor Wakeford.
Thanks. So you know, I can't speak to the details of the town council's decision making and decision on that one specifically, but in terms of the general question, we are. You know, it would be open to us to ignore the development, to ignore the development of the town sharing with us their interest in purchasing the Oast House, but it has struck us as a significant opportunity, particularly in the context of the pot available for the Priory areas, not reflecting the visions or aspirations around a a fuller quarter redevelopment, it presents an opportunity to look at best use of the Priory Centre, because the Priory Centre, the Town Council are currently in as tenants in their offices, as colleagues will be quite familiar. So it presents more flexibility. It is literally a few yards, maybe tens of yards outside. It's immediately adjacent. So it's in terms of how does it affect it? If that was the question, it potentially improves the options available to us in renovating or redeveloping or otherwise improving the Priory Centre to make it the most useful asset for the town of St Neots we can.
Fine, okay, well, thank you for that. Now, are there any more questions on, Councillor Gray?
Thank you very much. I think that the wayfaring thing has been sort of talked about fairly well, but I think it served as to come along and perfectly prove the point I was making about on the previous item about, unspecified things gaining life all of their own without. Who did that? A life all of their own and needing to be reined back in. And I don't need to, I would just say that I entirely concur with the comments that have been made. I'm curious, 2.16. So the Priory Centre, we're talking about here about, unsurprisingly, I'm going to get back to executive action here for you. So it benefits from funding via the Future High Streets Fund, which must be fully spent by March of 2024. Consequently, by the end of this financial year, so that's sometime in the next 3 months, we intend to gain agreement on the preferred option, allowing 12 months to complete detailed design, planning and building regulation approvals and completion of construction and or refurbishment works. And I suppose the question I've got to ask you, and you may want to turn immediately to your left, is how confident are we that you are going to achieve all of that in 15 months? Because it sounds like a tall order to me. And if we fail to get it done in 15 months, how is it going to be paid for?
Pam, Councillor Wakefield.
I think the easy answer is it is a very tight programme. We're not denying that. I think what we've been doing over the last few months is working quite closely with the Town Council, which is why we actually know about this opportunity that they're currently considering. And we are trying to build that into our thinking. The scoping of the reconfiguration of the building, we are looking at a sort of a variety of options, one which includes the Town Council still being in the building, one that gives us greater flexibility if they were out, if that makes sense, so that we can come to some quick decisions about the future direction of that building. I think there's a lot of information that we've inherited. There's been lots of feasibility studies done on the building and the surrounding area. So we have a wealth of information that informs us about what the options are potentially for that building. But we do need to now get down to what are the actual costs compared to what the actual funding envelope is for the building, and look at some sort of realistic deliverables so that we can actually get on the ground and meet that deadline. I think we do appreciate that it's tight. We also do believe that the relationships that we've got with DLUC through the Future High Streets Towns Fund team are strong, and there is a feeling from what we've been told by them that if we're on site with a programme plan, that the funding would be safe and secure. So if we slip by a couple of months, there is a feeling that that wouldn't jeopardise the funding that we've got, because obviously it would be almost spent by then. But from our perspective, it is tight, but we do think it's currently achievable with the work that we're currently doing.
Thank you, Pam. Are there any more Councillor Gardner?
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, going back to then the Priory Centre, what you've just said, when does HDC need to know from the Town Council what its preferred option is, i.e. to remain within the Priory Centre or to go into the Oast Lounge? So, you know, surely there must be some point in this process when you need to know definitely from St Neots Town Council precisely what they're planning to do. So can we have that piece of information? Because at the moment we're not being told that. We're being told that just we are working with the Town Council, but at what point do we need to have a decision from St Neots Town Council to make sure that HDC are not spending money on something that St Neots Town Council say, well, sorry, we don't want that now, we're moving into the Oast Lounge?
Thank you. So certainly we want St Neots Town Council to make its decisions as soon as possible, and it is moving swiftly on that, and we are content that we can incorporate a decision from them. I would just flag that their purchase of it would not necessarily be for them to move themselves into it. I think it's fair to say that they are also finalising decisions around, you know, how best to make use of that asset in terms of the sort of combined usage of the Priory Centre and the Oast Lounge. So soon, but it is. We are content that we can get clarity from them in a timescale that enables us to proceed as is set out here. But if Pam has been given any further specificity she wishes to add on that, she's welcome to. But as I say, soon enough to enable us to meet what's here.
Thank you. Councillor Gordon.
Thank you very much. So from what you've just said then, I just want, you can guarantee that St Neots Town Council will have come back to HDC within sufficient time so that HDC at any point have not wasted money on renovations that then prove not to be what the St Neots Town Council want because they've decided they're going to do something slightly different. Is that correct, or have I got that wrong?
I cannot issue any guarantees on behalf of the Town Council at all because I am not a member of it. I don't represent it. But I'd say again that from the relationship we have with them and the discussions that we have had, there is extremely close working now that we have a large enough officer team working on Market Town's programme under Pam to have frequent contact with them over the course of each working week. We are confident that we can get an answer from them that enables us to meet the timescales as we've set out.
Thank you, Councillor Wakewood.
Can I just add? I just would like to say that the Town Council is fully aware of the timescales that we're working to, so that will inform.
Indeed.
Concentrate minds. Good.
And if I may, I think the Town Council would be the last stakeholder to want this money to be used in an unnecessary, wasteful way. I think in the language the councillor used. So they grasp that.
Thank you. Are there any more questions on the Market Town paper? Okay, now actually, in order for us to actually have a show of hands, summarising our discussions have been quite eclectic, and trying to capture all the major issues because obviously there are 4 market towns, so trying to catch them all is quite difficult. However, I think what I've taken away there, I think we're united in terms of the review of the digital signage. I think we actually are probably all in agreement that perhaps we want to see, is it practical and do we actually need that moving forward? And I think that would be part of a review, perhaps, that we want to do. In terms of the other issues, they're so detailed, it would be very difficult for me to actually agree individually what our recommendation was. So can I assume that in principle we agree with taking it forward with the caveats that we've actually outlined in terms of the digital signage, and there are no other major issues? I think we've actually covered a lot of the issues on the timing and the budgets. Are members happy with that? Okay, can I have a show of hands then on that? Thank you. So I think we can move forward to the next item. So it's item 6. So that's infrastructure funding statement.
Is this the one that's working? Yes, appears to me. Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. As the report says, we're here just to discuss the infrastructure funding statement. This is basically shows all the expenditure up until the 31st of March of this year, so between the 1st of April 2021, 31st of March 2022. Just shows how we're delivering the corporate plan as of March 22 and the local plan to 2036, with particular regard to infrastructure to enable growth. And we're happy to take questions.
Thank you. Any questions? We're all questioned out. Councillor Gray.
There we go. Just a quick observation, if I may. So firstly, thank you for the report, because there's a lot of numbers on here, and getting them all adding up and, you know, flowing through must have been complicated. This is not about the accuracy of the report. It's a reflection of the report. If we were to look at page, for example, 10, allocated SIL receipts that have been put to various projects, only one of those projects has actually spent any SIL money. And most of these are going back to 2020, 2021, 2019, 2020. There's a recurrent theme here, which is evidenced when we come to the capital item later on, of it just taking so long for this stuff to trundle through the system. I mean, Brampton and Buckton, Great Ouse Valley right-of-way improvements. I think I've seen a member of the coalition standing under the bridge at the A14 saying how terrible it is that people can't walk along there. Well, for the last two and a half, nearly 3 years, some SIL money has been sitting there waiting to be spent. So I think this is not a comment, because all you're doing is administering the scheme, but I'm talking to the executive councillor in terms of, we've allocated this money, what's going on? Over to you.
Thank you. Well, I think the first one I would comment on is the Alconbury Weald Special Needs School. That's obviously a very big project, and we'll need the pupil numbers in place. That will be something that the County Council Education team deal with. Capital projects are taking a long time at the moment. I think that's a reflection of the state of the economy, lack of labour, and the increases in inflation.
Thank you. Any more questions? No? Oh, Councillor Pickering.
Thank you. Yeah, I've got a question. There are two amounts that are marked as unallocated relating to land north of Cambridge Road in St Neots, which is the current Loves Farm development. There's about £250,000 there, which is showing as being unallocated. I was just wondering if you can clarify what those amounts have been allocated to and why they haven't been spent.
Thank you, Councillor Pickering. Are you able to direct me to where specifically in the IFS you're referring to that? Because I'm going to think it's going to be under the heading of section 106.
It's page 29. So it's the it's 3.4C, and it says summary details of the infrastructure projects to which receipts have been allocated but not spent. So in the actual report, it's page 29.
Yes.
So that is related to a Section 106 agreement pursuant to the outline permission associated with what we would call Love's Farm 1, Love's Farm as built. So in that regard, basically it looks like it's still related to a number of what we call equipped local area play, which is essentially your play areas that have the equipment in them, like your swings, benches, and that as well. What we have done is that is indicating that we have received the money, it's been allocated to, and it's proposed to be spent. But with Section 106, when we sign legal agreements as part of planning applications, the individual agreements will be quite precise on the money and how it can be spent, unlike SIL. So I'm happy to have a conversation offline to give more detail behind that, but for clarity, there's a number of points there that will have been part of the Section 106 agreement. We have the money, as in the developer has paid us. It's now moving through to the funding of the individual items that sit within the Section 106.
Thank you. I'd be definitely grateful to understand more detail about where that money is and what it's for. Thank you.
I think it's worth noting something I've done over the years. If you want to speak to something at Town Council, they've mentioned a bit tonight, they might be interested in putting forward a spending bid to the appropriate department. There'll probably have to be an indemnity agreement involved, but if they have a project they'd be interested in spending the money on, then I think it might be useful to hear from them, or indeed from local members.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. Are there any more questions on this paper? Thank you. Well, I think we can move straight to sorry, bear with me, obviously. Oh, yes, okay. I mean, it's just the confirm the recommendations that we're proposing.
It's just commenting.
Yes,
So
it
we're in
is.
agreement with these cabinet recommendations.
Right, okay. It's the cabinet recommendations. Have you had a look at those? Are there any comments? Are we quite happy with that?
Just wants to show hands.
Yes, exactly. So can I move to a show of hands then for that? Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay. We can now move on to item 7, Greater Cambridgeshire Partnership. Welcome back.
Thank you for a horrible moment there in the silence initially. In the lack of questions, I wondered if I wouldn't even have time to drink a glass of water, but I've at least remembered my bottle this time. I am here this time to speak to you about the Greater Cambridge Partnerships Making Connections consultation. Colleagues have heard the GCP present directly to us on this twice and may well have, in any case, reviewed the information online, joined other meetings and events. There is much discussion about this. I think it's fair to say. As you have heard a lot from me this evening, if the panel will forgive me, I'm not proposing to explain what the proposals involve. I think that is well understood, but the report does give a summary that we hope is of assistance in that. The report is accompanied by a draft letter that would form our response to the consultation as a district, and I suppose we are particularly keen for feedback on whether that is pitched about right, on whether it picks up key issues, whether there are issues missing in here to feedback. So that's really my key key request to you as a panel. I would underline, as the letter sets out, that obviously the upsides of the scheme are considerable. I think there is a broad degree of recognition of that. More buses, faster buses, a more reliable network, along with the reductions to congestion and pollution in Cambridge are all obviously very desirable. There are, though, clearly concerns with the impact of the road user charge that's proposed. I won't speak to all of the bullets in the letter because you'll have read them, but you know, particularly on the first couple, I think we are seeking assurance that there is sustainability in the proposals, regardless of how behaviour might change, which is the purpose. To ensure that there is the funding will be sustainable long term, particularly in terms of the rural routes, which sort of at one analysis are inevitably going to be less profitable, where you've got fewer people making particular journeys. So, as the second bullet flags, the concerns about the disproportionate penalty impact to those in more remote parts of the district, I think there's no getting away from. That is clearly a downside and a challenge to these proposals. In our feedback, we're also underlining the importance of using any improved bus network to improve connectivity between our market towns, as well as merely to get to Cambridge, because Cambridge is a wonderful place, of course, and I spent a lot of my life there, but it's not the only place our residents want to go, and benefiting from a more sustainable network as a whole, I think has benefits regardless of the Cambridge connection. The second bullet does touch on a point again that I guess I'd encourage particular feedback on, because there may be different views, which is to say, as has come up in the consultation meetings that we've had so far, there are expanded park and ride sites being proposed, but they're all quite a drive from here, so they would provide an opportunity to avoid the congestion in Cambridge by swapping to a bus at them, but there would still be considerable road miles to get there. So as things stand, the second bullet is in a reasonably sort of high-level way, inviting conversations around further investigation of the viability of park and ride locations more distant from Cambridge. So, in other words, do we want to ask them to look at sites closer to here, so you have less far to drive, and then longer on a bus? But obviously, that would mean park and ride sites in places. Is that a conversation we want to be opening in this response, or not? So colleagues may have views. There is one specific update I'd like to share with the panel, which is that the GCP are apparently paying close attention to our discussion this evening and our potential feedback, and they have picked up on the papers in the public domain, and have in fact, understand, written to us this afternoon in order to try and contribute to our understanding on some of these points of concern. We haven't had opportunity to digest that at all yet. I haven't even read all of the email yet. I've been at work today. But I think it underlines the interest from the GCP, which I think is positive, but subject to comment, I think we might wish to take up their interest in engaging with us more fully about these concerns by seeing what further information they can share and what further conversation we can have to assuage some of these concerns, if indeed the panel are minded to agree that we're getting it about right in terms of what we've identified. I will stop there. I don't know if Clara wanted to add anything or not on any of that, maybe briefly.
Thank you. As pointed out, the letter or the note we've received today it's a positive note, but just to be clear, it's not introducing any new information essentially over and above what we know. They are seeking to give us just some additional detail to perhaps answer some of the points raised, but shouldn't detract from the conversation tonight. Just another point of clarification in your report, you'll see the letter is referred to as Appendix B. It's an operator error in old money. The consultation itself would have been the Appendix A, but of course that's gone in as a background paper. So just to clarify that the only appendix to the paper tonight is that of the letter itself. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification. I'm sure that we've got comments to make on this. Councillor Corrin.
Yeah, I think well, Clara just headed me off there, to be fair, on my question, but I think just for sort of housekeeping, really, I guess, probably should have declared an interest in that. As a county councillor, this will be debated and has to be voted on at county level, so you know, it's a bit tenuous, but at the same time, if in doubt, always declare it and cover yourself off.
Thank you for clarifying. Councillor Gordon.
I will need to declare the same, Chairman.
Thank you. That's kind of you. Are there any other comments on the report and the response? Sorry, Councillor Gray.
I'm very glad that I'm not declaring an interest as a county councillor on this one. Can I say that I think that this letter is a very good letter, and I think it does strike to the heart of the issues and concerns. I think you have carefully considered what kind of questions may come from this side of the house. So there's a nice reference there to, you know, non-town locations. Even Western Huntingdonshire gets a mention in there. So I'm very pleased to see that. And you've done a brilliant job at carefully sidestepping any sort of opinion, expressing opinions this evening, other than the fact that if we got all of this, it would probably be really good news. And that's probably the comment that I would like to add into this, is that I think these points are the points that probably are of concern. So we can see that they're flapping around over Addenbrooke's because they don't really know what to do about it. And, you know, the low paid, what on earth is the low paid? You know, one person's low paid is another person's well paid. So, you know, again, total vagueness there that needs to, you know, be bottomed out if they really want people to engage seriously on it. The point that you touched on is the point that I would go to in terms of substantiveness. If you're going to really encourage people in this district to get out of their cars and to get onto buses, then there has to be somewhere where they can do that in this district. Now, we have a rapid transit point in this district already. It's called the Park and Ride to St Ives. You know, it was going to transform, Tom's smiling over there, you know, councillors of a certain age, this was going to transform how we got to Cambridge. So forgive me when I look at this to say, I personally think I have little confidence that they're going to get this right in terms of the ability to construct a network, fund the network, and make sure that the network works in a way that doesn't end up this just becoming what happened in London, which is basically a congestion charge that's basically a tax on people going in because people are saying that the infrastructure doesn't work. So for Huntingdonshire, my ask would be that you think about, you know, you've said we would welcome further investigation of the viability of park and ride locations more distant from Cambridge. I personally would like you to do that somewhat more strongly. I think we all around this table, particularly those of us who don't live on the fringes of South Cambridgeshire and East Cambridgeshire, probably need to temper our expectations. This is the Greater Cambridge Partnership. I don't live in the area of the Greater Cambridge Partnership. As far as, unless Clara's going to correct me, I think I'm just outside their kind of zone of influence. So, you know, why would they be interested in rural West Huntingdonshire? They're much more interested in Royston and Newmarket than they are us. And I think we just as a district need to, you know, probably be aware of the fact that, you know, we need to be realistic in terms of what we're asking. But my feeling is that if you were living around the outside of St Ives or you were living around the outside of St Neots or Huntingdon, you want to, and there's a fast bus from Huntingdon, you want to be able to drive to there and get on a fast bus and go to Cambridge, not drive to Madingley or Milton Road or somewhere like that. So my feeling is that infrastructure here needs to be put together. Long way to go on this discussion, but I think you've done a really good job at encapsulating the issues for the district, and that's the only tweak that I would suggest.
Thank you. I agree, actually. I thought it was a good response. Are there any other questions? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. No, I was Councillor Grace still.
May I just respond on Councillor Gray, and Clara may wish to as well. I think in an ideal world, we'd be looking at linking up to the other transport strategies we've discussed, both at, by that name and by other names, governed by county and the CPCA as well. What we would ideally like is a situation in which you don't need to drive into the market town to then get the fast bus, but one in which there are other modes of transport available to you, and active modes are more easily available. But the reality is, of course, that depending on location, that is more realistic in the near term for residents who live in some parts of our district than others. I would just underline that members who happen to be sitting on that side of the table, as on that side of the chamber in full meetings, aren't the only ones representing rural districts, and these are concerns that we're very much picking up through, as it were, our side of the chamber as well as yours. But it's immensely reassuring to me that they are the same concerns, if you like. I think if there is not anxiety from the panel about a stronger formulation around encouragement to investigating park and ride sites closer to the district or in the district, then I'm very happy to commit that we will strengthen that one. I see the argument on the value of that, which is why we flagged on it there. I don't know if Clara wished to add as well.
Thank you. Just as a point of clarification regarding we'll call it the reach of GCP. I think what's relevant to have in mind is when this was launched back around October, November, clearly the challenge about buses had recently emerged, but it's thinking about this alongside how we look at the local transport and connectivity plan, as well as the transport strategy for Huntingdonshire, those of which that have come before you previously. So it's about our sphere of influence, recognising that the CPCA are the transport authority. So with that in mind, clearly, as per the letter set out, I do feel there is relevance in continuing and using every opportunity open to us to continue to make sure that our voice is heard on the key themes raised.
Thank you. On that, are there any more questions? Or are we happy to actually move to? Sorry.
Yeah, just a small point, really.
Councillor Martin. Sorry.
Sorry. Was it you? Sorry, we both put a hand up then. Sorry, can you go for it?
No, thank you, Chair. I would wish personally that we were a bit stronger about the case of Adam Brooks and Royal Papworth and things like that being included within the congestion charge zone. I have personal experience. Last 5 weeks, myself or a member of my household has gone to Adam Brooks every day of the week for the last 5 weeks. That soon adds up. And when the person in hospital is the only breadwinner in the house, we've got no money coming in, but a lot of money going out, including petrol. And then you'd expect us to pay an extra £5 on top per day to visit a loved one in hospital. I don't see how that is humane, quite frankly. I know residents in my village that are receiving cancer treatment in Adam Brooks every day of the week for 6 weeks at a time. Again, they're not able to work during that period of time. How can we expect those people to pay an extra £5 a week on top of their fuel bills? And do you really expect someone that's just received chemotherapy treatment to want to travel on a bus to get to and from treatment? Because I wouldn't want to. So I would wish that we were a lot stronger to them and saying that we do not want Royal Papworth or Adam Brooks included within this congestion charge zone. I don't agree with the congestion charge zone at all. But if it's going to happen, we should not be including any hospital or healthcare facility within that zone.
Thank you.
So the councillor used you to me in terms of the proposals, just for avoidance of doubt. I and HDC are not part of the GCP. This isn't our consultation to run. This is our consultation to submit. But councillor makes a point compellingly. I also visit the site for in recent weeks' work and personal reasons with family members as well, and so I'm certainly not unfamiliar with it. I suppose a key point is that final sentence on the bullet, though. So currently, the letter acknowledges that the status quo isn't sustainable either on that site. So I suppose, with all respect to the I suppose severity of the challenge there, quite rightly, I would wonder what the alternative is. And it's certainly not clear to me what the ideal solution on that site is, because I have spent long periods in queues there, including on an occasion recently, dialed into a meeting of hospital consultants from the queue to get into the car park on the hands-free. So in my day job, so I think the intention around doing something about the gridlock on the site, and there are going to be more hospitals, plural, on that site, I mean, depending how we count them. Children's Hospital, a cancer hospital, over the coming years as well. It's not shrinking; it's growing. The connection points to the surrounding streets aren't able to be increased as well. I don't think there's any suggestion of bulldozing through houses to build more entry link roads. Cambridge South Station, even if it is primarily intended to offer travel options for those on the site as well, it would seem quite surprising if it wasn't also used as a route to London from people as well. So I have tremendous sympathy with the GCP in identifying that something needs to be done, but and so there's an intention to be, I suppose, balanced in recognising that in the language there, but as is set out there, we are challenging on the appropriateness of that and whether there's a way of excluding it. I mean, as I understand the proposals, but again, they're not ours. There wouldn't be a requirement to pay that charge to visit a relative, because you would have the option of easier access through Park and Ride, but that is not always as helpful as it might be, as has been set out. So. I hope what's there is fair on that point, but I recognise the challenge, which is why the basic point around the hospital site is in there.
Thank you. Sorry, was there another quick? My apologies. Thanks.
No, sorry. I think we both put our hands up at the same time, didn't we? Yeah, I completely agree with the comments that have been said about that. I think it's a great response. It's I think. The only thing I would probably like to see added, if possible in any way, I think where we mentioned already about Western Huntingdonshire, I think because there's no we've got here that there's very little written about that at all. In the northern area as well, it's probably although it's mentioned, it's still lacking massively. I think so any way that we could put that to address that, I think I'd appreciate. And you could probably say the same about further beyond, south of around the St Neots area as well. Although there are some great links with St Neots, the rural areas are lacking. And I think the only other point I think as well is, and I know it's probably not intentional, but about the as if this side of the desk is different to. We're here representing Huntingdonshire, which is what we're doing with this response. I think great. I don't think whether we sit this side of the desk or that side of the desk. I think it's it's not that this side's against or for and that side's against or for. I think we're here as a group. So I just a little comment there. It just makes it. I think how it's been worded. I think it makes it sound that we're one side and that's another side. I think we're not. Just nothing meant by that. Just a comment.
If I may, Chair, that was merely a reference borrowing Councillor Gray's language. I think intended lightheartedly. I'm sure around this side of the chamber, caring about rural residents, which he said with a smile. And I meant on the same basis. But thank you for that point, because I and we as a joint administration could not agree more strongly with that sentiment, and that is the whole purpose of all of what we said to date. So I won't labour that point. But on the substance of your earlier comment around, I think it was really a reference to what's picked up by the last bullet point in the letter around urging that the value of interconnection between towns to build that user base to make it more viable to in the interests of the sort of the GCP's links as well. It would help if we had those improved connections. I completely agree. I mean, we've got the example of Western Huntingdonshire there. I suppose we could give examples of everywhere represented by members around the table, but certainly happy to look whether we can make reference to the north of the district there as well, because you obviously are a great distance away and particularly reliant on buses.
Thank you, Councillor.
If I may, I think just and it's not something that's in our gift or our control. I know, but I'm sure all of us sitting around here, every time we go through a consultation about transport. I think most of us end up with less than what we started with, which is a great shame. And that's not within our gift, isn't it? But I just hope that this isn't the same again. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Councillor Corley.
Thank you, Chair. I've forgotten what I was going to ask, but no.
It's been so long.
No, I just really want to say, Sam, I was heartened to read this letter. I think, as others have said, it's a good letter. Particularly heartened that Councillor Gardner and myself have been buying on about the villages that we represent, and that's reflected that our concerns are there, and I accept that we're not the only ones representing villages. So thank you for that. I just wanted to sort of feedback on, and I agree with my colleague at the end of the table, having spoken to all of the 6 parish councils in my ward, to a man, they disagree with the fact that anyone should pay a charge to visit the hospital. And I think we really ought to underline that strongly. And I know that the GPC are probably flapping at the moment. We're trying to work out what they're going to do there, but I think they need to listen to residents. While nobody wants the congestion charge, and many of my residents don't understand why, they'll accept it if that's the way it's going and probably shop online more, but that's by the by. But the hospital was the one thing I heard continually from my residents at parish council meetings.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, if I may on that, I think not to seek to do the GCP's job for it, because it's perfectly able to do that. But as I reflected back to Councillor Martin, I think there is I suggest there is a valid challenge of what would they do instead to alleviate the congestion on the site. I think we've got a proposal which is the GCP's best stab, but we share the concern on that point, which is why we're saying what we're saying in the letter.
I think what we're saying is we'd like to see something stronger there, saying we don't agree that the hospital should be included. I know they're searching again, and to your point, I mean, it's their problem, and they need to. And I totally understand what you're saying, and I accept that they've got a real headache there. But our residents are very unhappy at the thought of having to pay £5 to visit someone in hospital. Certainly in some of the situations that my colleague has described. That's all I'm saying. If we could just be strong in putting that forward.
Yeah, and I suppose the pushback, such as there is any on that, is to sort of ask how constructive a response it is to assert more firmly when we know very well we're not offering a better alternative on it, which I'm sure they'd be interested in hearing. As I say, if it's gridlock with 3 hospitals when there's 5 hospitals by the end of the decade on the site, as I say, depending how you count them, but expansion there, quite aside from all the other development on the campus beyond the hospitals. I'm pleased I'm not in their shoes having to make decisions about this, because I can't see a better option either. But our response on this is as suggested, but we've certainly heard the comments from some around the table around a wish for strength on that.
Thank you, Councillor Wickford. Councillor
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, I would just like to reiterate what Councillor Corley has said. In all the 9 parish councils I go as the district council, they are all extremely unhappy with the proposed charge to go to the hospital. And all of the 25 parish councils that I attend as a county councillor, they are also all exceedingly unhappy with that. So that just gives you, the response I'm getting back is the main issue is being the charge to go to the hospital. So just let you know that's what the residents in my particular area are mainly concerned about. But with regard, I fully, the letter is excellent, Lara, but I would just like to see a bit more of a suggestion with regard to buses to the west and the north of the A1. The GCP, as far as I can see, are proposing 4 to 5 buses an hour to the likes of St Neots and Huntingdon. Therefore, I cannot see why we could not suggest to them as a proposal that we have a bus an hour that went to, say, Alconbury Western and Saltrey, and then you have another one that goes from St Neots down the B645 through the villages to Kimbolton and Tilbrook on an hourly basis, because I think we need to show them what sort of proposal we would like to see. Because if people in those villages can then get on a bus, they can go in, if there's a dedicated time for a bus leaving Alconbury or Saltrey or Kimbolton or wherever, then they know that's how they can get into Cambridge without having to take their car to a park and ride site. So that saves the infrastructure for a park and ride site and everything else if we go down that line. So I just think if we could be a bit more, give them a bit of a nudge to say, this is what we think would be quite a good idea, then I think that would help. And that would then help with the carbon and everything else, where we're trying to get down to carbon zero, where we're not got cars travelling into a park and ride site because people can get it in their local village.
You've heard a lot from me in recent answers, and I think Clara would like to come in on this one.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner, and I'm sure a GCP would welcome, a helpful steer. What I think, though, is perhaps in this regard, it would be better to think about how we pitch this to the combined authority. They are the transport authority and effectively in charge of the bus strategy. I think the headline point you make, and has been made multiple times tonight, around having more frequent buses to the north of Huntingdonshire, to the west, and then where do we have those pivot points that we can connect into rapid transport into Cambridge. I would encourage we focus on that, but of course where there are opportunities to improve bus services locally that you feel would be taken by your residents, assuming that they meet the needs of your residents, it's how we look at the opportunity to feed that back to the CPCA as they start to look at the next phase of their bus strategy and how that nests in with their local transport and connectivity plan.
Thank you, Clara. Thank you. Now, are there any more questions before? No, we need to go home at some point.
Does that mean you wouldn't take kindly to me saying a couple of words in conclusion then, Chair?
Yeah.
So I'm just conscious, may have been left hanging. Councillor Gray, I think in the first contribution on debate, did accuse me, if I heard correctly, of having avoided saying very much on the proposals, if I'm characterising him correctly, and I would, which I take wasn't a reference to the volume of commentary from me this evening, but I would just like to underline on that point that I and our joint administration don't share I was going to say that the cynicism, maybe I mean the scepticism from some members that have been expressed this evening around the sort of lack of likelihood of tangible improvement. I think that the proposals are really exciting and could be really transformative. And I think in the opening paragraphs of the letter, we do seek to capture recognition of that. So I hope we're not sounding neutral about the proposed benefits, but what we are encouraging, as the letter sets out, as the report sets out, but I haven't said yet in debate this evening, is because of the diversity of views, because of those differential impacts, we are urging in the final days of the consultation as many residents as possible, as many businesses as possible to submit. I'd encourage councillors to relay that, as I dare say they have been already, to their towns and parishes and residents, so that the GCP has the fullest evidence base for Huntingdonshire in making all of the different decisions that it might make around this, including around the potential viability of routes and so on. So we are very much excited by the proposals, but that doesn't mean we're not concerned by the things set out here. But we do want as many people to submit as possible, given that diversity of view. And I will stop there, Chair.
Thank you for that summary. So if I can take this opportunity of actually trying to sum up again, which has been interesting, I think in principle I think the feeling of the meeting is that positive. I think the response is appropriate, perhaps a little stronger in some areas, and certainly the concern raised about the hospitals. I think we've all perhaps, as councillors, actually shared that experience. So I think those are the main issues that are coming out. We of course accept that we would like more buses in different rural parts of the district. That's a given. But on the whole, can we support the recommendation going forward to Cabinet? Recommendation making connections the paper and the proposed letter. Can I have a show of hands on that? Thank you. Excellent. Thank you very much. No.
Chair, before we move on, can I just clarify that the comments that were raised will be available for Cabinet, I mean, in the usual way. That's my first point.
Yes, so obviously, given the timings of this month's meetings, the Cabinet agenda has already been published, as I'm sure you're aware. The intention is to publish all of the comments from tonight's reports as a supplement to that Cabinet agenda on Friday, so that the Cabinet have sufficient time to digest those over the weekend before their meeting next week.
And on another point, well made by Councillor Wakeford about people engaging with the consultation. Now, I know that somewhere buried in my inbox is going to be, an email telling me that I can do this or what have you, but I wonder if it might be useful for DEM services to circulate an email to all members saying, here's the link, publicise it through your own networks. You've probably already done it. Is it worth doing it again, seeing as I haven't seen it?
I'll certainly ask for that to be included in this week's member alert again, because I believe it's already gone out.
Yeah, it's a very, very helpful suggestion, Councillor Gray. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we've got item 8 now, which is finance and performance.
I seem to have picked the working microphone. Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. Just as a quick way of introduction, at the last Overview Scrutiny meeting, it was commented that this was the second report for this year that was coming in late, which is inaccurate. So July's report was on time.
I think it's the comment that was that they were not coming at the same time as the corporate performance reports, which normally they sit at the same meeting.
Okay. Right. In which case I misheard. I wasn't, obviously I'm observing, I'm not taking meetings. So this meeting or this report is indeed slightly late in terms of where we'd like to be. However, the timetable didn't allow it to be published. There just wasn't physically enough time in order to do so. And obviously for next year's schedule, we're going to make sure that there is sufficient time and that we don't encounter these problems again. And over to Karen.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm here to present the Q2 forecast outturn to provide an update on the finances of the council. You may recall the Q1 forecast outturn suggested a deficit to budget of 275,000, and being cautious, we predicted that that would increase as we went through the year, given the inflationary pressures on our costs, particularly the council's energy prices. I'm sad to say that the Q2 forecast presented has been updated with these pressures, and whilst the deficit has increased, it's now showing a 418,000 deficit to budget. It's not as great as we feared it would be. Waste recycling credits are higher than budgeted as a result of both the volumes collected and recycled and the price that we achieved. We're starting to see some of the benefits from initiatives set up during the year, and some of our council services are seeing increases in revenues. And treasury investments, I'm not trying to take anything from the next item, because interest rates have increased, we are seeing higher interest receipts as a result of that. But we do continue to have pressures against our services. Our temporary accommodation costs are higher than the housing benefit subsidy received as a result of landlords increasing the rents to us. We continue to struggle to recruit staff in some areas, requiring the use of more expensive agency staff, which not only impacts our costs, but it also impacts upon our service delivery. And One Leisure has had to bear inflationary impacts on both energy and staffing. It employs a disproportionately large number of lower grade staff, affected by the higher than expected increase in minimum wage. Plus COVID recovery and the recession are still squeezing incomes for that area. All of these factors are built into our Q2 forecast we presented. On the capital front, we continue to forecast lower than planned expenditure. Planned projects are running later than we originally planned due to COVID and getting hold of contractors in some areas. Where we have external funding with due dates for expenditure for completion, as we picked up in the earlier item, we are mindful of these and we're working to achieve those. We don't want to lose our funding. Unscoped projects, particularly those which require external borrowing, have not been progressed. Whilst we have fixed rates of borrowing on our existing Public Works Loan Board loans, and therefore no additional risk because of the higher interest rates at the moment, any new borrowing would be at the increased rates, and that would put additional pressure on our future revenue budgets. It's not something that we want to do at this point in time if we can avoid it. Council tax and business collection rates, given the downturn in the economy, we continue to monitor these quite closely. And I'm very pleased to say these remain either consistent with or better than performance achieved in previous years. That's my update.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions? Councillor Pickering.
I was just wondering if you could say a little bit about why the income from parking is so reduced and whether that's expected to continue.
The reduction in parking this year is due to car parking enforcement, which hasn't gone ahead, which I believe, sorry, I'm showing my naivety here, I believe is a result of county not going ahead with that.
Thank you.
Is that down to the not going ahead with the decriminalisation of parking?
It is, yes.
So it was income that we were expected to receive from parking fines and so on that we haven't received. Is that correct?
Yeah, so civil parking enforcement is going to be delayed. It's in partnership with Cambridgeshire County. They've got to be finishing marking of lines and things like that, which haven't taken place, so that slowed things down. I think the working assumption, I wasn't sitting around the table at the time the budget was put together, is that by enforcement of parking restrictions would drive people to use our car parks, and therefore there would be a greater income from the car parks. It isn't expected to generate revenue through the civil parking enforcement side of things.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Gray.
There we go. Good. Yeah. Okay. So that I think I'd like to follow up on the comment made by Councillor Pickering, because it's one of the things I've written down here, because I'm really unclear as to why there's a drop. So forget about CPE. Why is there a drop in car parking revenue, particularly on-street car parking? Because on-street car parking's got nothing to do with us. We don't keep that. So there's a comment made in there saying it was put into the budget erroneously and now is being taken out of the budget. So perhaps if we could clear that up, that would be great. Shall I pause there and let that question be answered?
So I can't be 100% sure because I didn't get into the level of the detail with the budget. So I will have to take that one away. My understanding was that if you're enforcing yellow lines and preventing people from being made parking where they shouldn't be parking, that the theory was that people would park correctly in car parks where they are then delivering a revenue. So the use of the car parks increases through the decrease in illegal parking. I think that was the logic. But we will have to take that one away to give you a more thorough answer on that detail.
Yeah, I think that's not. I think, yeah, go and get a more thorough answer, because I don't think that that's quite correct. 3.1, this is mainly as a reduction of income on street parking due to the suspension of charges. It's got nothing to do with enforcement. It's got nothing to do with increased people using our car parking. It's a suspension of charges. It looks to me like there could have been an error there, Karen, but it would be great to get to the bottom of that. So I think probably just, if I may, Chair, just turning to the to this, I would agree with your sentiment that it's not surprising that the deficit has widened slightly. I think that's, but I would have to say that I still think it's performing probably better than I had anticipated, given the pressure that's on the costs. I would take issue, if I might, Karen, with the report that says this is mainly as a result of reductions in income. Income reductions account for about 473,000. New sort of increased staffing costs are 503,000, and increased costs, just because costs are going up elsewhere, are 807,000. So the issue is not really reductions in income, it's really about costs being driven on in other areas. And all we can say at the moment, I think, is thank heavens for operations coming to the rescue with the numbers that they've got in there. So I think if we could have some information about on-street parking, off-street parking, or whatever parking at some point, that would be great. I will say, I hear Councillor Micklebird, the point that you make about late and not late. I think we're all aware that the other panel grappled, shall we say, with one leisure and one leisure charging and the proposed fee increases. And I'm afraid that panel was kind of fobbed off by telling them, oh, we're not answering any financial questions about one leisure, because the other panel looked at that. Well, the other panel gets the pleasure of looking at that this evening, and it's not a good look from what I can see. As I look through the very detailed, for which I thank officers, the very detailed, I think it's in Appendix 1 at the bottom of the revenue, page 14. There's some really good comments there, some very good commentary, financial commentary that we can read, but it doesn't make good reading, is my analysis of that. And it leads me to ask the question yet again of the executive councillors that are present. of the confidence that you have about putting up fees and charges in the middle of a cost of living crisis, hoping that that's going to drive increased revenue, because everything that I read in there would suggest otherwise. So I think it's really good that we've got that there. It's unfortunate that it's come into the public realm after you've taken a decision to increase One Leisure's charges. Thank you very much, Chair, sorry.
Councillor Nicol.
So I'll take a response on that. The timing is unfortunate. It certainly does make it difficult. It is a subject that's had significant debate. We will look in the budget for next year to be trying to clarify what we do with One Leisure from a commercial point of view, and how we make that operate, and how we also incorporate some of the really important work like active lifestyles as well. But it is, as we stand looking forward, it's extremely difficult to be clear as to how things are going to go. We need to put the prices up because the costs have risen in the way that they have. If that turns out to be an incorrect decision, then we would obviously need to be looking at a commercially minded way of doing that thing. Sorry, let me start again. A commercially minded way of responding to that in such promotions as market segmentation, in terms of certain incentives to drive footfall and so on. I think Greg is doing a good job in trying to round some of those off and bring those proposals ready for the new financial year.
Thank you. Councillor Gray. Yeah,
just a quick supplementary question. I'm really curious as to how you had a detailed debate about this when none of this was, I mean, was this kind of secret stuff that the Cabinet saw that nobody else saw? Because this is the first time we've really had a Q1 kind of recap and a Q2 reforecast, to my knowledge, come into the public realm. And I don't know how you can have a detailed debate about it other than doing what it appeared the other panel had to do, and that is trust that the commercial, the head of service knew what he was doing.
So I'd respond to that to say that the Q1 figures were not good, and it was possible to bridge those and look forward for the rest of the year and consider next year's budget position using the Q1 figures from One Leisure with the increase in price. I mean, heating a swimming pool costs you a lot more than heating just a sports gym. So seeing the increase in prices for the electricity per kilowatt to One Leisure allows you to draw a very direct line between the costs that we will incur next year running One Leisure as opposed to the costs that we've seen in the past. Extrapolating those out, we didn't really need that much of the rest of the information around to be able to look forward with it. But Q1 pointed us in the direction that meant that taking that price rise option was in the best interests of protecting the council's budget, the sensible step to take.
Councillor Blackwell.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question, if I may, around financial performance 3.1 and the housing benefits para there. Can you outline the mechanics of the reduced court fees, please, and whether we failed to take action or swiftly enough?
I don't immediately know the answer to that. I will come back to you with a fuller answer.
Thank you. Are there any, Councillor Gardner?
Thank you very much, Chair. If we go back to One Leisure, it states... Sorry, I do beg your pardon, Chair. Hopefully we'll be on this time. If you go back to 3.1, it states in the report with regard to One Leisure, reduced net membership fees across all sites has lost £257,000. to date. Now, that's before you've even put up any charges. You've now put up the charges. So surely your membership fees are going to plummet because people, you know, in this current climate, going to One Leisure is a luxury item. It is not something you need to do every day. So I'm just concerned that this is going to get worse rather than better when you're already losing members before you've even put up the price.
Unfortunately, you're not talking to the right person in terms of the detail of this. I would proffer the alternative, which says that we've got to draw a balance between will increasing the prices deliver a greater revenue overall than the revenue it will lose from people deciding that they're going to surrender their membership. That is always the quandary that you have when you consider any sort of price rise at any point. So at this point in time, we have needed to make the decision to make that price rise. But as I've said, if commercials require us to be considering different marketing activities or different pricing structures into next year, then I am sure the executive holder will be bringing those options to the table for discussion by overview and scrutiny.
Thank you. Councillor Cawley.
Thank you, Councillor Mickelburn. I recognise that we're grilling you on One Leisure, and you're not the executive councillor responsible. So, Chair, can I make a suggestion that perhaps we invite the executive councillor for One Leisure to attend this meeting at some stage, since there's a lot of interest in this topic, and I think certainly in terms of understanding the finances, I had the pleasure of watching the councillor online, and she was very clear there was no plan B. Listening to Councillor Mickelburn, it suggests there may need to be a plan B if it doesn't work the way that they all hope it will work. I certainly would like to see that executive councillor here to sort of help us understand the financial analysis that was done before this decision was made, because as Councillor Gardner says, looking at these numbers, it doesn't make sense.
So we will make arrangements to see whether or not it's possible to have that conversation.
Thank you for. It's getting late. Are there any other questions on this? Okay. Now, in summary, here we go. This is the highlight of my evening. Right. Okay. In summary, obviously there are some issues that members have highlighted, but are we in general support of submitting it, subject to getting further clarification specifically around One Leisure? Is that a fair point? Okay. And the car parking. Those are the.
And court fees.
And court fee. Oh, okay. Excellent. So there are those three issues. Okay. So do we need a proposer?
I think that's just going to be obviously in the comments.
Okay. That's fine. Well, thank you for that. Councillor Gardner.
And
Another one.
We'll be asking the portfolio holder for One Leisure to come to a future meeting of this committee.
Yes, I think that's reasonable.
Thank you for confirmation, Chair.
Yeah. Now, I just need obviously a show of hands for the recommendation on that, please. Thank you. Excellent. Thanks very much. Item 9. We're going to Treasury. Welcome, Oliver.
Evening. I've got for you tonight the 6-month update on Treasury. If I can just give you some highlights. The investing, if you table table 2, if you look at table 2, but that highlights we've got about 10 million more cash than we had at the end of March, in March 22. So our investments have gone up. The interest rates have also been rising. In April, they were about 0.5%. by the end of September, they were up to 2.2, and they're now at 3. So we're looking at increasing interest rates over that period for investing. We're also seeing increasing interest rates for borrowing as well. So we've got our current borrowing portfolios at 2.8%, but the current rate is 4 to 4.5%. So if we were to borrow some extra funds, we'd be looking at a higher rate at the moment. The borrowing has been paid down by about 100,000 over the 6-month period, and the most significant change in our portfolio is the Luminous loan was paid off at the end of September. So that was 4.8 million of our lending to Luminous that was paid back. And we've now, at the beginning of October, paid back to the PWB the borrowing that we made at the same time. So in the next report, you'll see a reduction in the borrowing from the PWLB. So that's probably good news. Also, we've seen currently, I think the bank rate is at 3%. So we're still expecting some increases up to about maybe 4.25, possibly, before it drops down again. So we could be seeing some further increases in interest rates over the period to March. So that's about it.
Thank you, Oliver.
Any questions?
Are there any questions from members? Councillor Gray. Councillor Harvey. Ladies first.
Thank you, Chair. Just the early repayment from Luminous. Did we lose out on any interest from Luminous as a result of them paying it early?
Yes. So in theory, they would have been, I think they'd still got about another 30 years to go on the loan. So we're missing out on some margin. We did get a discount when we repaid PWLB. So we've clawed some of that back. But yeah, we've missed out on the margin. But the agreement with them was that they could repay at any time. So we didn't really have a choice but to take that repayment.
Thank you. Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Chair. Could I take you to page 12, table 6? I omitted to thank Councillor Mickelberg in the last item that the commercial investment strategy is actually 20% ahead of budget in terms of what it's generating, which I'm very pleased to see. So here we've got the table set out of property that we have held for investment purposes. I just want to query, Oliver, the statement at the bottom that says these investments generated 2.8 million of investment income from the authority after taking account of direct costs. I don't think that's strictly correct because we make almost £5 million from our commercial estate. And I think the difference is that the existing portfolio at the top is excluded from the 2.8 at the bottom.
Yes.
So I think we just need to clarify that we're getting 2.8 million on to Stonehill to the bottom, or we need to say we're getting 4.9 million from all of these investments above. Is that fair? Because at the moment you look at that and say, well, we're not making what we're making.
Yeah, I can update the wording.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Oliver. Any other questions? No? Thank you for that. So just a final summary. So summary is that we're okay, we've identified some of the issues. Do we agree in principle about making the recommendation forward, subject to the amendments that you've highlighted on the wording? Can I have a show of hands? Thank you. Thank you. That's excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you, Oliver. Wow. We're item 10. So overview and scrutiny work programme.
So obviously the two items on there, as you can see, there is the review of external appointments to outside organisations. The draft report is just being finalised and the working group will be looking at that in the next couple of weeks with a view to bringing that into the democratic cycle in the new year. So obviously we'll keep you updated on that one.
And the climate group is sort of been well established, and obviously is now hoping to see the climate strategy, which is due to come to the January agenda of that panel. So that will obviously help formulate some of the strands of thought on that item. There's a second part to this, but is there any questions on those items for a start? Or the other thing to mention is that a roles and remits revised list was sent round to everybody last week, which just had some updates with some of the staffing changes and changes to some of the roles that had happened, and just if there was any questions on that as well. There's no particular change to who has which subjects under the remits. It's just that there was a few staffing changes, so it's just to make you aware of that, really.
Just a question's occurred as you were saying that, Becky. So the climate working group from the other ONS are working on scrutinising the the sustainability strategy, the climate strategy when it's published. Yes,
they're looking at different things that they've got some strands of items that they would like to look at, but they're just waiting to see that climate strategy to make sure that none of it's already been dealt with, if that makes sense, before they plough ahead on something that's already been ascertained.
Okay, and can I just ask, and you don't know what's in that strategy yet, I guess.
No.
It's not been published, but if there is a financial element to it, as I suspect there will be, will that come to this panel for scrutiny as well on the financial side?
It's currently, at the moment, only looked to going to the other panel. However, I can raise that concern and obviously feed back to you what we get from that.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Well, I have just got one final item on the agenda I've been waiting for all night, is to wish everybody a really great Christmas and New Year, and I look forward to seeing you all in the new year. So a pleasure. Thank you. And thank you. Thanks for all your efforts. Thank you. Very good. Thanks.